Thank you for holding this hearing. I want to go off script for just a moment. Nothing we do, and nothing any administration has been doing, can truly be deemed effective with respect to Iran until Iran stops its nuclear weapon program, ends its support for terrorism, and in the real longer-term sense becomes a government that represents its people. But I simply have to say at the beginning, there is no administration that has spent more time, more focus, and been more effective in assembling the kind of international coalition to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon than this administration. The fact that on any given day they do not announce to the world what the exact details of a response to a particularly heinous action is not evidence that it's business as usual. They don't care. They're not going to do anything. And I do think it is unfair to leave an impression that this administration is not deeply focused on the goal that we share. I mean, yesterday we disagreed about things. And the great thing about this subject matter in this committee is on this issue, you and I think Democrats and Republicans are of common mind and deeply committed both to the importance of achieving that goal and achieving that goal before Iran crosses that very dangerous threshold. And I just wanted to make those comments initially and then try to shorten the rest of my remarks here, because we are sickened by what Iran twisted their twisted and despicable plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador and possibly bomb the Israeli and Saudi embassies. And you're right, the involvement of the Quds force is telling. This scheme was not hatched by some rogue operator, but by a very elite unit of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the very essence of the regime. Iran and Syria do form the heart of Middle Eastern anti-Americanism and Middle East terrorism. Syria is Iran's forward operating base in the Arab world. Iran is Syria's major external supporter, helping the Assad regime murder the Syrian people now fighting for their freedom. We share the concerns about both regimes. Broadly speaking, we have used the same tools to deal with threats coming from Iran and from Syria, namely sanctions, and those sanctions have been at least partially successful. They haven't yet achieved the goal. Financial sanctions on Iran have complicated Iran's ability to do business in the world, including selling its oil, the industry that produces 90% of Iran's revenue. The legislation we authored last Congress, CISADA, has led to a significant decline in Iran's ability to purchase refined petroleum and to a near halt in the development of their oil and gas industries. Just this week, the International Air Transport Association announced that Iran's national airline would no longer be included in worldwide ticketing networks because of sanctions-related complications. The message to Iranians is clear. Their government's illegitimate nuclear policies are undermining their prosperity and isolating them from the international community. Syria's situation is more desperate than Iran's and is likely to become even more so when the EU boycott of Syrian oil fully kicks in next month. The Syrians claim they have 2 years' worth of foreign currency reserves. Most experts believe they will be out of cash well before that. Despite these successes, it is increasingly apparent that current levels of sanctions aren't enough to get the job done quickly in Syria or to get it done at all in Iran. In Syria, more pressure is needed. Turkey, a major Syrian trading partner, has significantly modified its decade-old policy of intimacy with Assad, but it has not yet implemented the sanctions it has pledged. Syria's other major trading partner, Iraq, unfortunately continues to support the Syrian regime. If Assad is to be removed soon, as we all desire, we need more pressure from Syria's neighbors. As for Iran, Although knocked off balance by sanctions, its economy is far from broken, thanks to high global oil prices. The Iranian nuclear program continues to progress rapidly. The threat has grown more urgent than ever. The most recent inspection report by the IAEA shows that Iran's stockpiles of low-enriched uranium continue to grow. It's been concluded by one respected analysis that Iran now has almost enough low-enriched uranium to produce 4 nuclear weapons. If it were to kick out international inspectors and further refine this material to weapons-grade levels, Iran could then produce its first bomb within 6 to 12 months and several more in the year after that. They're installing centrifuges 6 times as efficiently as its current model in a large enrichment facility in Natanz. This could reduce Iran's breakout time to 2 to 3 months. There are additional steps that must be taken. In particular, our bill, the Iran Threat Reduction Act, will tighten the screws further. I know we'll be marking that bill up soon. Another is stricter enforcement of current sanctions, and I look forward to a more vigorous enforcement from an administration which I know shares our goals. 2 examples. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps owns a company that controls virtually every port in Iran, yet I have not heard that we are sanctioning ships that use that company's port services, as CISADA requires. President Ahmadinejad and many other senior officials who are guilty of the worst human rights abuses in Iran have not been sanctioned under CISADA. These are but 2 of many possible sanctions that could be imposed. Another important step would be a decision by the Gulf Arab states, perhaps the states most directly threatened by Iran, as the plot revealed this week should remind them, to ramp up their oil exports. That would result in ramping down oil prices and would significantly diminish Iran's income. Can I have unanimous consent for additional minutes?
Absolutely. Yes, the gentleman is given the time.
Our best hope for slowing the Iranian nuclear train is to bring its financial machinery to a grinding halt. And sanctioning banks and companies in other countries that do business with Iran's central bank would have a uniquely powerful impact on the Iranian economy. And that's why I think the most dramatic measure we could take in terms of this legislation is designating Iran's central bank as a facilitator of terrorism and the development of weapons of mass destruction. Until now, we have sanctioned only Iranian banks that were directly tied to terrorism or weapons of mass destruction proliferation. But having peeled away the skin of the onion, it is now clear that at the core of this banking network sits the central bank, the ultimate enabler for all Iranian terrorism and WMD proliferation. For years, there's been speculation about whether a nuclear-armed Iran would actually use the bomb. As the revelation of the Washington bombing plot underscores, we know that nothing is beyond the realm of possibility regarding Iran's willingness to employ violence in pursuit of its objectives and to do so in the most vicious and amoral fashion. I can't conceive of a more irresponsible or frightening finger on the nuclear button than that of the Iranian regime, and I appreciate the courtesies of giving me that additional time and yield back.